Surely, many of us have visited royal palaces where the magnificent beauty, solemnity, and regal ceremonies make everything mysterious and captivating. But behind this dazzling appearance lies a story that few people know. A story about those who always stand there, steadfast in their duties, not just to observe tourists, but to carry out a noble mission. The royal guards, with their striking red uniforms and imposing tall hats, are always ready to protect the royal family from even the smallest threat. That's why when you visit a royal palace, you will see them never changing their posture, never smiling, and never stepping out of their position. But here's an interesting fact not everyone knows. These guards don't just stand still while on duty. They also face unpredictable situations caused by tourists. These incidents, sometimes as simple as a light pat on a royal horse or a disrespectful gesture, can be enough to provoke them. Individuals who are trained to not react to provocations. So, do these oblivious tourists realize their mistakes before it's too late? Imagine standing in the middle of a famous royal palace, in a bustling square filled with tourists, and seeing the royal guards standing there, firm and serious, protecting the country's most treasured assets. You can't help but wonder what they have gone through in their training to maintain such patience and responsibility. The story I want to tell you today is about tourists who, I believe, will never forget the lessons about respect and discipline after encountering the reactions of the royal guards. Some tourists don't understand that they are dealing with individuals of absolute discipline and that they are not living statues for tourists to challenge. And when these tourists cross the line, they receive a lesson they will never forget. There's one incident I can never forget, and I'm sure you wouldn't either if you witnessed it firsthand. This scene unfolded on a busy morning at the royal palace, where sunlight streamed through ancient stone columns, creating a space that was both majestic and serene. Everything was peaceful until a woman, holding a camera, approached one of the royal horses. She looked at the horse with excitement, as if there was nothing wrong with getting closer to take a beautiful photo. However, what she didn't realize was that her action violated a fundamental rule here. No one is allowed to touch the royal horses. These horses are not decorations or mere animals to satisfy photo needs. They are war horses, meticulously trained to protect the royal family. And when the woman couldn't control herself and unconsciously patted the horse, that's when everything began to change. The nearby guard, still standing in a solemn posture, suddenly turned around. His gaze was cold, emotionless, and stern. He approached the woman and firmly said, "You are not allowed to do that." The woman, seemingly unaware of the seriousness of her actions, chuckled lightly and patted the horse once more. That was the turning point. The guard stepped closer, stopping right in front of the woman, his voice losing its initial calmness. "Stop immediately. No one is allowed to disturb the royal horses," he said, his tone cold yet powerful. The woman was shocked, her face flushed with embarrassment, not expecting such a strong reaction to her unintentional act. She stepped back, her eyes filled with confusion, but she couldn't deny she had made a mistake. Everything around her fell silent, as if frozen for a few seconds. Nearby tourists started glancing at her. Some murmured while others stood still, silently acknowledging that they were witnessing an important moment. The guard's feelings at that moment were understandable. He is a soldier, trained to hold his position and remain patient in all situations. But when a serious violation occurs, he cannot simply stand by. The royal horses are not objects to be touched, and his duty is to protect the dignity of the royal family, allowing no disrespectful behavior. He didn't need to use physical force. A stern reprimand was enough to remind the woman that these boundaries cannot be crossed. At that moment, the surrounding tourists felt the tension. This story was not just about a woman breaking the rules, but also about respect. These royal guards are not merely protectors. They are custodians of order, safeguarding the regal values of the nation. Thus, every action they take carries a clear message. There is no room for disrespect. After the woman stepped back and realized her mistake, the atmosphere around gradually returned to normal. However, the embarrassment was still evident on her face. She realized that she had not only violated a rule but also disrupted part of the sacred atmosphere of the place. But did she truly grasp the lesson from this incident? Surely, This was not just a minor mishap, but a moment for all of us to reflect on how we conduct ourselves in such solemn spaces. This story is not just about a tourist breaking a rule, but also an important reminder about respect. When we visit places like royal palaces, which hold immense historical and cultural value, it is imperative to understand the rules and respect the space and the work of others. In this case, it's not only about respecting the guards, but also the royal horses, majestic war horses that are not easily trifled with. The royal guards are not statues or props for tourist photos. They are rigorously trained soldiers who maintain order and protect significant values. Therefore, their mission and actions reflect not just patience, but also respect for everything they safeguard. Like the guard in the woman's story, they remain calm in all situations. However, when you violate basic principles, you cannot avoid strong reactions. The woman's story is just one example. Once again, let me take you to another situation I witnessed. Also at the royal palace, a man, a tourist, committed a similarly serious mistake. He, like some people, thought he could do whatever he wanted when facing a royal guard. Initially, he only wanted to stand close for a photo, but when he realized the guard didn't react, he grew confident and moved even closer. He aimed to touch the guard's hat to pose for his photo, but he didn't expect that this action had crossed the line. As soon as he reached out, the guard didn't need to do much. He simply turned around, looked the tourist straight in the eye, and said in a cold yet powerful voice, "You are not allowed to touch my uniform." At that moment, the tension in the air escalated. Tourists nearby began exchanging glances, their expressions a mix of confusion and understanding. The man, though shocked, tried to maintain a confident face, but deep down, he felt the embarrassment spreading. He didn't expect that his careless act would provoke such a response. Royal guards not only ensure the safety of the royal family, but also preserve the sanctity of this space. Actions like these serve as a reminder to all of us about respecting those performing essential duties, people who cannot pause their work for any reason. And not just the guards, even the royal horses, with their strength and instincts, are integral parts of palace security. If you're not careful, you might face consequences you never anticipated. But what profound lessons can we learn from these situations? It is about respect and awareness. When you visit such solemn places, you are not just a guest. You must understand and respect the rules and their space. Doing so not only helps you avoid embarrassing situations, but also makes you a courteous and understanding tourist. Remember, not everything can be touched, not everyone is there to cater to your satisfaction, and every action can have unforeseen consequences. All these scenarios point to one thing. Not every place you visit allows you to do as you please. Royal palaces are unique spaces, and royal guards are individuals who not only protect the royal family, but also uphold the noble values they represent. When you step into such a space, always remember that respect is paramount. After the unexpected incidents mentioned earlier, the atmosphere at the royal palace seemed unchanged. However, the stories of those tourists did not end there. Let's revisit another situation where a tourist, unaware of potential dangers, continued to test the patience of the royal guards. One late afternoon, as the light dimmed and lamps began to illuminate, a group of tourists approached the area near the royal horses. Among them was a young man, his face exuding confidence. He stepped toward a guard, staring at him as if to challenge the boundaries. Despite knowing there was a clear warning sign, he decided to approach. "If I can just touch his arm, I'll have the perfect photo," he thought. As he moved closer, the guard, as usual, held his position, his eyes unblinking. Everything seemed peaceful. However, the moment the young man extended his hand, the guard abruptly turned and spoke in a cold voice. "You are not allowed to touch me." The young man paused, surprised by the guard's swift reaction, but he did not stop. "It's just a photo, man," he said, his tone slightly dismissive. "No need to make such a fuss." The guard did not respond, but his expression changed. He took a step toward the young man, his gaze sharp as a blade. "If you want a photo, take it from a distance," he said, but his tone had grown more stern. At this point, another tourist in the group, a woman, couldn't contain her curiosity and intervened. "Just let him take the photo. What's the big deal?" She failed to understand that this was not a simple matter. These guards protect not only the space but also the sanctity of the place. They cannot be easily challenged. The young man persisted. He's just a guard. No need to be so serious. But as he reached out again, the guard gave a loud, commanding shout. This is your final warning. Step back immediately. By now, everyone around was paying attention. Other tourists began to exchange glances, some even urging the young man to stop. Yet, he remained defiant, thinking his actions were harmless and failing to realize he had crossed the line. Suddenly, something happened that made everyone freeze. The group of tourists heard a loud, heavy snort. One of the royal horses, standing still until then, suddenly moved toward the young man. It turned its head, staring directly at him. Everyone stood frozen, and the young man felt the tension shift immediately. The guard quickly stepped forward, blocking the horse's path, but the snorting sound continued, and its powerful legs began to move restlessly. The guard stopped, turned to the young man, his eyes filled with resolve. This is the second warning. Don't you understand? By now, the atmosphere had completely shifted. The tourists, who initially thought the situation was harmless, stood silent, witnessing the intensity unfold. The young man, breathing heavily, finally stepped back and muttered, "I get it now." The guard, with patience and determination, said no more. He simply stood there, allowing the young man to realize that not everyone is free to act as they please. The royal horse began to calm down, but everyone present understood one crucial thing. Every action has consequences, and sometimes, these consequences cannot be undone. After this incident, not only the young man but the entire group of tourists began to realize that the palace they were standing in was not just an ordinary playground. A place like the royal palace, steeped in centuries of history and tradition, is not somewhere you can act according to your whims. And the truth is, royal guards will not simply stand by and watch you make mistakes. They have a vital mission, and that mission is to protect the invaluable values represented by the royal family. One member of the group, an older man, observed the situation and felt ashamed on behalf of the young man. "We must respect what they're doing," he said to the group. "This isn't a place for games." However, not everyone grasped the lesson immediately. Another tourist, the woman who had tried to intervene earlier, continued to test the rules. She moved closer and attempted to touch the horse's reins, thinking she could do so without issue. But as soon as she extended her hand, a guard stepped in, his voice thundering, "You are not allowed to touch the reins." Startled, the woman quickly withdrew her hand. Once again, those around witnessed a scene that couldn't be ignored. The guard's firmness made her realize that not everything could go her way. On a scorching sunny day, the atmosphere at the royal palace grew livelier as crowds of tourists flocked to visit. Everything seemed normal until a group of foreign tourists approached the area where the royal guards stood. This group included young individuals who appeared indifferent to the rules, and they began engaging in concerning behavior. One of them, a man around 20 years old, with a carefree demeanor, couldn't resist testing the rules he thought might not be too strict. He approached one of the royal horses nearby. "I just want a photo with the horse," he thought, stepping forward without hesitation. As he stood close to the horse, he reached out to stroke its sleek mane. Tourists nearby noticed and chuckled, thinking it was a harmless act. But they didn't know that these horses, specially trained, could react strongly if they felt threatened. The guard nearby, with sharp eyes, noticed the man's inappropriate behavior. He approached, and in an instant, everything seemed to freeze. The royal guard, with an authoritative expression, coldly stated, "You are not allowed to touch the horse." But the man didn't stop. He smiled and continued stroking the horse, seemingly unconcerned about the consequences. "This is not a place for games," the guard continued, his voice growing stern. "Step back immediately, or I will call for intervention." The man laughed, then not only touched the horse, but also reached for its reins, as if to push the boundaries further. This action was utterly inexcusable, and he had gone too far. At this point, the royal guard could no longer remain calm. He took a firm step forward and spoke in a voice sharp as ice. "I warned you. Don't test my patience again." But the intense situations didn't end there. Another tourist, a middle-aged woman, blatantly crossed the safety boundary. She seemed entirely unbothered by previous warnings and continued trying to slip past the protective barriers. As she got closer, one of the guards stopped her and stared with a steely gaze. "I'm sorry, but you cannot proceed further," he said, holding his position firmly. The woman looked around, noticing no one else trying to enter the restricted area. She stepped forward anyway. "I just want a photo with the guard," she said arrogantly. The guard was silent for a moment, but his expression shifted. "This is not a place where tourists are allowed to enter," he said, his voice now much firmer. "You need to leave immediately." Unrepentant, the woman repeated, "It's just a photo. What's the big deal?" Feeling insulted, the guard took a more decisive step forward. He extended his arm, gesturing for her to move back, but she unexpectedly reacted aggressively, her eyes filled with arrogance. "Who do you think you are to stop me? The world belongs to everyone, doesn't it?" This statement, a clear challenge, made the atmosphere more tense than ever. The guard didn't hesitate. He immediately signaled to a nearby police officer for support. The officer quickly approached and demanded the woman leave immediately. "I already told you, you're not allowed to enter," the officer said, his voice full of authority. "Your actions are a violation and could lead to serious consequences." At this point, the woman seemed to realize her mistake, but her arrogance wasn't easily subdued. She eventually backed away, but not without a dismissive remark. "It's just a photo. You're taking this too seriously." However, both the guards and the police knew that without firm action, such behavior would only encourage other tourists to think they could break the rules without facing consequences. That's why they must remain resolute and uncompromising in their duties, ensuring the safety and sanctity of the royal palace. These tense situations left a profound lesson for all of us. It's a lesson about respect and responsibility. When we visit extraordinary places like royal palaces, which hold immense cultural and historical significance, we are not merely tourists. We must recognize that every action we take can affect the solemn atmosphere and the seriousness of the space. Respect isn't just about refraining from touching objects, but also about understanding and following the rules that have been established. Just as the royal guards don't merely protect the royal family, they also uphold the cultural, historical, and spiritual values of the nation. From these incidents, we learn that personal freedom doesn't always apply everywhere. When we are in special spaces governed by strict rules, we need to respect the space and the work of those around us. Every action can lead to consequences, and sometimes those consequences are irreversible. After all the tension and dramatic situations we've witnessed, this story ultimately delivers a profound lesson about respect, discipline, and understanding the sanctity of sacred spaces and the people performing critical duties. Royal guards are not just brave soldiers protecting the royal family. They also represent respect for the cultural and historical values of a nation. The tourist who made mistakes, whether it was touching the royal horses or disrespecting safety boundaries, all learned that not every place allows unrestricted behavior. The patience of the royal guards, the timely intervention of the police, and the lessons from these tense moments serve as a clear reminder that respecting rules and spaces is essential to building a civilized society that values mutual respect. In a world that is increasingly interconnected and globalized, we must learn to appreciate the cultural heritage and historical significance of every nation. Every place we visit and every person we meet carries unique stories and responsibilities. To integrate and grow together, it is crucial that we preserve and honor those values. Through this story, we realize that every action we take, no matter how small, can have a significant impact on those around us. And when we face challenges in life, respecting and understanding the rules and cultural values can help us create a better and more harmonious society. If you found this story interesting and meaningful, please take a moment to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the Heartfelt Moments 85 channel to enjoy more inspiring, touching, and thought-provoking stories. Share this video with your friends and family to spread cultural values, respect, and understanding to more people. We can all learn from life stories to become better individuals and contribute to a more empathetic and respectful community. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.